What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin today. It is the 28th day of November, and Bitcoin is sitting at about $92.3 thousand right now. Hit that like button, you guys. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and let's get into it. I think this video is going to be good. We're going to go over a few different perspectives that should shine a light on what the price action over the coming days is going to be like, and going into the end of this month as well. And most importantly, what we have to look forward to in 2026. I think there's going to be some good things and bad things that we're going to go over in this video. Hopefully I'm wrong about the bad things. Hopefully I'm right about the good things. Let's get into it. Okay, hit the like button, subscribe. Here we are. It is the... Oh, hold on. My camera's frozen. Let's see. Is it good? Good now? Yeah. It is the 28th day of November. As I said, 92.3K is the price. We have 9 hours and 45 minutes left in the day. And we are going to go over the short-term stuff in a second. But first I want to look at the long-term stuff, or the longer-term stuff. The weekly time frame has 2 days and 10 hours left in it. The monthly time frame has 2 days and 10 hours left in it. There's some significant things going on over the next 2.5 days, you guys. And I want to talk about something significant that we could be doing here by the end of this week. And then we'll get into the monthly, which, again, very interesting prospects here. I think a good goal for Bitcoin by the end of this week would be to close above last week's starting point, right? Last week opened here, and not every single low this cycle has been like this, but almost every single macro low that we've seen has done exactly what I'm asking of this week to do here. Watch, let me show you, right? Some people, everybody defines, I shouldn't say everybody, maybe I define bullish engulfing candles differently. I feel like it's engulfing if you close above where the last, like the body of the candle. Some people say it needs to engulf the whole wick. So for this to be engulfing, you would have had to open here, wick all the way down below this wick, and then come up and close all the way above this wick, or close above the body but have a wick that's above that wick. I don't know. I think it's just if you can literally eat up all of that body, all that candle body, and do it, I call that an engulfing candle. I'm getting that put out there right now because I'm going to say engulfing candle a lot, and I don't want people to hurt their brains thinking, oh, that's not an engulfing candle. Well, that's what I call an engulfing candle. Here, on our last macro low, where we opened and then where we closed, we engulfed the body of the prior candle. And this was at the low, right? This was at the low, and on the week there we had an engulfing candle. And then what did we do? We reversed and we moved up higher. Even here, where we had a low, we had an engulfing candle. That signaled that we were ready to move higher, okay? Right there, both times. Both of our last, think about the last two discernible lows that we have. Right here, right here. Right? This is all not really discernible. This is the more discernible one. But from here, the last two discernible lows we had were here. And they both had this bottom where the week marked the bottom by closing above where the prior week had opened, right? Both times. We go back here, and it's the same thing, right? I guess to be completely fair, and again, I did say it wasn't every single bottom. To be completely fair, this was the bottom. We didn't have a bullish engulfing candle here, but when we actually started to move higher, we did have a weekly engulfing candle here. So that's something to note. And here it wasn't at the absolute low, but it was at a low point. Can we agree on that at least? Here, same thing. At a low point, you actually engulfed your prior week's candle. It wasn't the big candle that you engulfed. It wasn't the whole range, but it was the candle right there. That one might be more of a coincidence, but still, technically, it counts. Here, right here at this low, you had an engulfing candle as well. That sent you up higher. Here you did not, and you moved higher, but it was a false move. Here, it was the real move. You see? Here, this was the low, and this one was engulfing. That one's not really fair because the move was already done by that time. But you get the point, right? You get the point. It's not a perfect thing. It's not a perfect thing, but I didn't see a single example. We saw examples where, you know, there wasn't an engulfing candle at the low, but we didn't see an example where there was an engulfing candle at the low and we didn't push to new highs. We didn't see an example this whole bull cycle where we had a engulfing candle at the low, whatever the low might be, and we did not push to new all-time highs. That did not happen once this cycle. That has not happened. Every single time that we've had an engulfing candle, we have pushed on to new all-time highs. Okay, so that's something that I'm just saying. I'm not saying that to imply that that means that if we close up here, we're going to go to new all-time highs. I'm not trying to imply anything. I'm just telling you what has genuinely happened this whole cycle, and that is something that 100% without a doubt has happened this whole cycle. Okay. There can be no debate on that. What is going on? Hold on, guys. Hold on. Hold on. Could you guys hear that? What's going on? My computer just made some noises, but there's nothing going on. And is there something open on X? If you rewind it, was there something playing on X? Maybe there's something playing on X. I'm going to mute this in case that happens again. I don't know. I don't know if anybody heard that. I was hearing noises. I'm like, where the hell is this noise coming from? I thought it was like somebody was turning on the sync. Anyways, let's keep going. Hopefully that wasn't distracting for you guys. Hopefully that wasn't a bad like noise or anything. I think everything's muted. You shouldn't have heard too much of it. But anyways, so that's the first thing that I think is interesting. So with that being said, 2 days, 10 hours left in this week. We're not here yet. And you can't just get above the line and then come back down and close below. No, you have to close above this line. So the goal at the moment, and when we look at the short-term stuff, hopefully we see that there are signs of readiness to continue higher over the next couple of days. But the goal at the moment, at a minimum, I think, is to close this month, this week, above 94.3K. If we can do that, that doesn't mean we have to go to new all-time highs. But every time we've done that at a macro low before, it has sent us to new all-time highs. It's been a macro low. To be completely fair, right? And notice here, right, there was no bullish engulfing candles until here. Then we moved up. There was no bullish engulfing candles here until here, and then we moved up, right? There were no bullish engulfing candles here. I guess one right here, and we did move up a little bit, to be completely fair. But it wasn't from the low. It wasn't from the low, right? This was the low candle, and it didn't engulf. This specific criteria that we're looking for, every time it's happened, it's worked out, okay? Anyways, looking at the monthly time frame now. There's some interesting things to think about. There's some good things and bad things here. I'm going to go over the bad thing first. Okay, the bad thing. I went through Bitcoin's whole history, and I saw, and this doesn't mean this has to happen. Okay, this is a bit of fugazi technical analysis for you, but it is a fact nonetheless. I went through and I looked for every single red November that Bitcoin has ever had. Every single red one. All right. Here you've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Novembers that have been red. Okay. In your lifetime. After this red November, you had a red December. After this red November, you had a green December. This is the only time we have ever seen a green December after a red November. This is the only time that we've ever seen a green December after a red November. Every other time that we've had a red November, we have seen a green December. Doesn't matter if it's at the beginning of the bull market or bear market. Doesn't matter if it's at the beginning of the bull market. Doesn't matter if it's in the bull market, right? Almost every single red November we've had, I will say, has been in a bear market. But every single one, except for one, has provided a red December. So red Novembers beget red Decembers. If that's hurting your feelings, because we have 2 days and 10 hours left, you might be connecting the dots here. You might be thinking, wait, so we're going to move up, but then we're going to have a red December? Red December doesn't necessarily mean a lower low, right? It just means a red month. If imagine December, we open up at 99K. Maybe that's where we close this month, at 99K. We'll just for fun, let's just imagine that. December could close $1,000 below where it is now and still be red. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be a dramatic red month. Maybe we pump up, we get a big wick, and then we come back down, something like that in December. I don't know. And again, that doesn't mean that December has to be red. We have seen it where December has been, or November's been red, and then December was green. We have seen that happen before, but it's only happened once. And again, this isn't the most kind of sound analysis to lean on. It's just a fact, though, nonetheless, that out of the 6 red Novembers we've had, they've all led to a red December except for one. So that's just something to consider there. I am curious to see if we have a red December or a green December. But if we had a red December, this would go that would go very well with my theory that we had literally at the low on the 21st, that we would be moving sideways. Even if we went above 110K, 100K, we could still be moving sideways. We could still see lower lows and still be moving sideways and still move up. We could go all the way up to 110K from here, come back down, see a lower low. It could be January and we still move up and then we see new all-time highs. If we see a lower low, we're probably not going to get that much of a lower low. It's going to be insignificantly lower. But again, this week, if it can close above here, that might suggest that we don't see a lower low. That might suggest that is a serious macro low if we can close this week above 94.2K. Now, I want to look at the monthly time frame again, but this time in a positive light. Imagine that the month closes at this white line or higher. You're going to be left with a candle where half the candle is a wick to the downside and half the candle, probably even less than half, would be a body to the upside, or to the downside as well, above where the wick and the body start, I guess. That's at 94.3K. I mean, where we are now at 92.6K, we're leaving behind a pretty hefty wick on the monthly time frame, I would say. That's a pretty hefty wick right there. But we've had a couple of these candles where they've marked significant lows with very significant wicks, right? This is one that stands out, in my opinion. But the higher up it goes, the more, if we can get it to be less of a body and more of a wick on this monthly close, that would have more bullish implications. It'd be really weird to start a bear market off this way, right? Last cycle, we started off our bear market like this, right? We didn't have big wicks to the upside or to the downside. Whenever we did, we stagnated for about a few months, and then we moved lower, right? It's not that you can't have these big wicks and then you can't go lower. You can. Price action can be a little weird at times. You know, even here, last cycle, we started off our bear market like that. We don't really start them off with these big wicks too often, but it happens sometimes. But just a thought here is that if we can close above 94.3K, we fulfill our goal on the weekly time frame. We also fulfill the goal on the monthly time frame, which the goal on the monthly time frame is to leave behind a bigger wick than a body. That doesn't, again, a bigger wick than a body doesn't necessarily mean that we have to move higher. But we had a bigger wick than a body here at the top, and that marked the top. We had a bigger wick than a body here at the top, and that marked the top. We had a bigger wick than a body here at the low, and that marked the low. You know, we had a bigger body than the wick here, but that body was up, and that, you know, has a pretty big wick to the downside still that marked the low. It's not a guarantee. We've seen moments where you get big wicks and it seems like you're at a low point, but you still come back down and eat that back the next month. It's not a guarantee, but just statistically speaking, you're more probable to have a macro low if we can leave behind a bigger wick than a body. Okay, just something to think about there. So now I want to get into the short-term stuff. All right, we're up at 92.8K now. We've moved up a little bit. I'm just saying we've got 2 days and 10 hours left. We could move well beyond 94.3K, you guys. What if we're at 99K? What if we're at 104K? I highly doubt that this month reverses and that in the next 2 days and 10 hours, 9.5 hours now, that we move up 18%. I highly doubt that. I don't think that this month is going to close green. But how much of this body is going to get eaten back? That's what I'm curious. And then the next thing after that, the final perspective I want to leave you with before we get into the short term is, what happens to the bears? What happens to the bears if we close at 100,000 or higher? Or if we're at like 99,000? What happens to the bears when the body is so insignificant compared to this wick? And everybody's saying that month, depending, like imagine it closes here, that this is the beginning of the bear market, right? The narrative kind of goes out the window. It kind of goes out the window. Where's the 50-week moving average? I'm kind of curious. Right there at 102K. What happens if we start closing weeks above the 50-week moving average and we leave a month with a big wick behind it like that? Right? The narrative starts to change, you guys. We look at the short-term stuff. Speaking of the narrative changing, we're doing something that I didn't believe we would do just because everybody's calling for it. But to be completely fair, we're doing it in a way that's kind of uncalled for, is we're having a V-shaped recovery. And the V-shaped recovery was called for. I feel like most of the market was, as far as the bulls are concerned, most of the market was considering that we would see a V-shaped recovery. I was thinking we wouldn't see a V-shaped recovery because typically, whenever Bitcoin hits these levels, we stagnate. But in that stagnation, maybe we move up a little bit. We have a V, you know, and then we move down. I think this V-shaped recovery, it looks real right now. It looks like a real V-shaped recovery. But the thing is, typically with Vs, this part of the V is slower than this part, typically. Not always. You can have successful Vs where this part is slower. You can. But typically, this part, the recovery phase, is faster than the decimation phase. And right now, I feel like this part is slower, right? We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days from the low this way, and we're right here. We go 7 days from the low this way, and we're all the way up here. You know what I mean? Like It's moving slower, at least at the moment. So my thought is this: because it's moving slower, we might get the V-shaped recovery, but it could be a failed V. If it is a V-shaped recovery, typically V's go to the top of where they started and they actually consolidate there. Maybe they pull back a little bit, they can even pull back below that and they consolidate, but then you continue to run. Typically, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, this turns into a bull flag in your V-shaped recovery, right? It could be confused or considered like a cup with handle if people don't identify it as a V and they're looking at it as like a cup with handle. But bull flag, cup with handle, V-shaped recovery, consolidation, it's all the same thing. That's very common that you consolidate just above where the V started, right? A little bit higher, a little bit above that point there. So where did the V start? That's the question. And because this V is moving slower, is that a signal that this could potentially be a failed V? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not the most experted person on V-shaped recoveries. I don't know what's statistically more probable to be a failed V or not. I just know that when a failed V is a failed V is whenever you reach for the top of your V, but you can't get there, right? And then you consolidate. You break out of your V. That's a failed V. That could imply lower prices. That might not imply lower prices, but just so that we're aware. This V could have started here. It could have started here. I guess it could have started here, but I doubt it did. I'm under the impression that it probably started here. That to me seems the most obvious. So a failed V, imagine that we were supposed to go up here. We're supposed to go to just above where the V began, right, and consolidate there in the same area that we consolidated right at the aftermath of October 10th. It's like right in the heart of that zone there. That's kind of the projected area. That is a 107 to potentially even like $115,000 price for Bitcoin. Okay, that's what this V-shaped recovery would bring. If it's a failed V, we probably stop below. So where might be a good area to stop below? It might be right here. And I'm not saying that I expect this to be a failed V. I'm not saying I expect this to be a successful V. I'm just saying what the scenarios might be. If it's successful, we go to $107.5 thousand to maybe about 115K. We'll consolidate there. We might even come a little bit back down, even below 100K, and then continue to rally. Maybe that's what we do. Or maybe we stop just below here where there's prior support. We stop somewhere between about 101 to 99, or yeah, about $99,000, somewhere here. It's a failed V, and we consolidate. And then, maybe in this essence of this move down, with the low reading that we had in the RSI, typically, whenever we see this low reading in this RSI, every single time in Bitcoin's life that this happens, or at least throughout this whole bull market, to be completely fair, we have consolidated for anywhere from like 30 days to 60 days, so somewhere in that time. There was one time where we consolidated for about 14 or 18 days, I can't remember. But typically you consolidate 30 to 60 days. That's typically what happens. Maybe it'd be better said 4 to 8 weeks. That's typically what happens. 4 to 8 weeks is actually better, because it's not really 30 to 60. It is more like 4 to 8 weeks, to be fair. So if we see this low level in the RSI and we are to consolidate for 4 to 8 weeks, might we have a failed V? Might we go into December with this, being closer to this failed V? We start here, and then we come down. We break out because it's a failed V. And then we consolidate. We're figuring ourselves out. Maybe we find a low, a higher low, a double bottom, something like that. We come back up. It's the end of the year. It's December. It's the end of December right here. It's the end of the year. We close the month red because we opened it up here. We close it down below. I'm just drawing here. Who's to say that it turns into a double bottom? Who's to say that it doesn't do this? Who knows what it does? But I'm just saying, in this scenario, we could both find a double bottom or a higher low or even a lower low in Bitcoin's price, recover, providing that was a low as well, leaving a wick behind in December and still closing the month red, while still moving up from here to a point that makes sense to find resistance or support at. Now, this doesn't have to happen this way. Maybe we have a V-shaped recovery, we consolidate, it's a bull flag, and then we continue to break out. And December is actually a month where we see new all-time highs. I'm not under that impression. I'm fully under the impression that Bitcoin is not done with the bull market. I'm fully under the impression that we see new all-time highs. I just don't think that it's going to be from here. I genuinely do believe in the Thanksgiving analysis that I gave you guys a couple days ago. I know Thanksgiving was yesterday, but we did the analysis on this 3 days ago, I want to say, a couple days ago. I genuinely believe that this low reading in the RSI, this move down here, is not something that we're just going to V-shape recover out of. I don't think that's what's going to happen. If I'm wrong, I would be so happy. I would love to be wrong. Okay? But likely what's going to happen is we probably move sideways. Oftentimes, when the RSI hits this level, we do see lower prices in Bitcoin. That is oftentimes not the low. If this week can close above where last week opened, that might, we might have some contradicting facts there, because that typically signals a low, where on the daily RSI, typically you do go lower than this point whenever you hit this low in the RSI. Not always, but typically. We could see a move that takes us back above 100K, 110K, and still go lower, and still be fine, and go to new all-time highs. That's the kind of weird part. I feel like that's the bad part, but the good part too. The bad part is no matter how high we move, the door is left open to potentially go lower, to potentially come back down to these areas below 90K, right? And that just sets us up for a maybe heartbreak for people who are leverage trading, but also for a bit of a boring time in the markets. Maybe exciting for altcoins, but probably boring for Bitcoin. Or we're going to do something that's completely unprecedented. And the thing is here too, I want you to understand, if you're bearish out there and you think Bitcoin is going to go lower, then guess what? It's the same thing for you. If you're a bear, we're likely going to consolidate for a month or two before, and we're done with our first week here. So 3 weeks more to 7 weeks, 3 to 7 weeks is what we're probably going to consolidate left in this range before we make a move down or up. Like that is significant. We're going to be in this range. I think we're still establishing this range. So regardless if you're bullish or bearish, it doesn't really matter. I think we're going to be stuck. And I don't expect December to be this groundbreaking new all-time high month. But if it were to be, I want you to understand, statistically speaking, that's very improbable. But it would be miraculous. When you do statistically improbable things to the upside, to the good effect, that's because something's going on that beats the statistics. There's something going on in the markets that is so powerful that what would normally happen is just disregarded entirely. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, and December is this big, beautiful month. I think we're going to have a good time now between 92.6K and the end of this month. And I really think that we're about to unleash some psychological warfare on the whole crypto markets, because what we're about to get, again, I think in the next 2 days, because we're so close, is a bullish engulfing candle at the low, which is marked the low for almost every single low that we've had this cycle, for a plethora of them, for several of them. More than less, can we say that? And every time it's happened, it's worked out. We've gone to new all-time highs. On the monthly time frame, we're going to have if we close above this line or higher, we're going to have a bigger wick than we do a body, which is also a very bullish signal in itself. It's a bullish reversal signal in itself. And then all the meanwhile, there are some statistical probabilities that because November had such a bad month, because of these low readings that we had in the daily RSI, December could really be a red month. So you're going to have these very bullish bottoming signals here, while also having signals that suggest we're not ready to move up. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's going to be a lot of people when we're back around 100K, we might not even be above 100K, who are going to be screaming new all-time highs, new all-time highs, and it's probably going to feel like we go to new all-time highs. And then at that point, we might come down and see a lower low. And then everybody's going to say, we're in a bear market, we're going down, Bitcoin's going to 7K, it's going to clear out MicroStrategy. There, all these FUD BS comments are going to be said about Bitcoin, and then we'll recover. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm calling for this to be the low. I don't know if we go lower than that low, but I do expect that we move sideways, and I'm open to the fact that we could see a lower low in that time that we move sideways. Okay. We should be moving higher. Either at the earliest, I would think we should be moving higher by the end of December, if not probably sometime in January. And everything, the base of my theories here, the base of my analysis is proven wrong once we get a day to close above 116.4K. When we take out this high, if we can close above there, I mean, especially if we just V-shape recover up here, I might be wrong. That would be a serious reversal. Then everything, we're going to have to rethink things entirely. But at that point, I don't think anybody's going to care that I was wrong. I don't think I'm going to care that I have to rethink things. I hope that it's more bullish than expected. I hope we do something that's not normal to the bullish effect. We could also, and we don't like to think about this, but we could do something that's not normal to the negative effect too. We could move lower, but again, typically we don't move too high or too low from this point here, once we find a low at this level in the RSI, right? Typically, and I'll just show you again for anybody who missed that video, because you're just kind of trusting me at this point, right? You're like, okay, he says it, but let's go back. I think I did like 6 examples, but let's just do one. I would compare what we're doing here to this one, not to this one. It'd be more comparable to this one, okay? Because this is the first reading on this low end that you've had in a while. This is the first reading you've had on this low end in a while. This was the second reading, whereas this was the first reading. Does that make sense? This is more, I think this low is more associated, sorry, this low is more associated with this low is more associated with what we're doing now. Right? Same thing here, same thing here, same thing here maybe. Okay. We'll just look at those. Those are just the last like few examples. We could keep going back in time and it's all the same stuff more or less. Here, we were at the low, right? That was our low in the RSI. Did we go lower in the price? This was also our low in the bear market. Yes, we did go lower, but just barely, just barely. How long did we consolidate? It was November until really December. So for about a month there, November 11th to December 31st, and then we started to move up. We were still technically consolidating, but we started to move up on the 31st. I'm not going to go to where we broke out. I'm just going to say when we started to move up. So that's about a month and a half. Here, at this low point, to be completely fair, we did V-shape recover out of there. That's a bad example right there. See, that's one where it didn't work out for me. So it can happen. We can V-shape recover. I don't remember this one for some reason, but it can happen. We can V-shape recover. However, what we did before was we consolidated for a very long time, right? And then after we V-shaped recovered, we consolidated for a very long time. I mean, really, we consolidated for a very long time, to be completely fair. The next time that we saw lows this low in the RSI, we consolidated from basically, and did we go lower is the question too. We did. We went slightly lower, by the way. We had a nice pump up and we still went slightly lower. People were probably panicking right there. We went from August 17th until really, I would say October 15th, so about 2 months there. And then we started to push higher, okay? Consolidation. Here, we were at a low point in our RSI right there on this day here. Did we go lower? Yes. Every example we've had, except for one, we have gone lower, right? We have seen slightly lower lows. This one's a little bit more dramatic, but we moved sideways from here more or less for a very long time before we started to move up. Here, did we go lower? Yes, but only slightly lower. We consolidated for a few months, a couple months, and then we moved up higher, right? And I've been saying 30 to 60 days. There's a couple of examples there where we've actually gone over 60 days. It could be February that we start to see life in the markets again. Maybe we move sideways like this until February. But typically, every single time that we've seen this in the markets where we've been at this low, we typically do see slightly lower lows. The only time that we didn't was when we V-shaped recovered out of there. And this was the V that we did, right? This is the example, that one example right there. If we keep going back in time, you'll see that statistically speaking, we are more likely to consolidate than do something like this. But it can happen. This was a very fast move. Not so much here. This is not so fast. I'm not expecting that kind of reaction. I'm not expecting that we just rip all the way up to new all-time highs. But I'll be proven wrong if we get to 116.4K. I'm done. I don't have anything else to say. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves. And again, keep in mind, the goal this week, in the next 2 days, and what is basically 9 hours and 20 minutes at this point, the goal is to close above 94.3K. It's not because if we close here, this invalidates the bear market. It's not because if we close here, that validates this as a low. It's because if we close here, there's a statistical probability that we're going to see some continued growth. There's a statistical probability that this is a macro low and that we likely do see new all-time highs, right? That the reason why this is important, it isn't even necessarily because of all the implications that it has because of what we've done before, but it's because it gives us a fighting chance to validate that we are still in a bull market, okay? If we don't close above this level by the end of this week or by the end of this month, that's okay. It's not going to hurt our chances, but it definitely helps them if we can. So that's the goal, 94.3K. Very confident we're still in a bull market, unwavering confidence, even at the low, even at the absolute low. We got that pinned. I didn't pin it on x.com, but you can go back to November 21st and see that we literally made a post on x.com saying, I am 100% confident we are still in a bull market. I got nothing else. Hit the like button, subscribe, take care of yourselves. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.